Keek on the mic, Keek on the mic, Keek on the mic, Keek on the mic. People, this the intro.
Talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down. Bear down.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Like always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you also follow me on all my social media platforms to stay connected with all Keek on the Mic news. So, Bears fans, before I go any further with today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I just want to remind you guys once again that the Keek on the Mic channel giveaway is still going on, and the giveaway will be open for you guys to enter until September 1st. Once again, it's a huge opportunity to gain some awesome prizes. I'm giving away a signed Richard Dent, signed Michael Singletary jerseys, Keek on the Mic hats, Keek on the Mic shirts, and much, much more. So once again, you still have a couple more weeks to enter before the giveaway actually ends, and I'll be announcing the winners prior to the Week 1 matchup against the Green Bay Packers. Once again, thank you guys so much for all the love and support you continue to show Keek on the Mic every single day. So, Bears fans, I am actually really excited to do today's episode of Keek on the Mic, and for the longest time, I wasn't actually going to address this rumor, but this is an absolutely massive rumor going around about the Chicago Bears and Kansas City Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones. According to NFL notifications, I know a lot of people have certain feelings about NFL notifications on Twitter. A lot of people said their sources are rigged, they don't have any sources, blah, 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 blah. But most of the time, they actually do have some reputations where they're actually correct on most of the stuff that they report on Twitter. So according to NFL notifications on Twitter, the Bears have been linked to the Chiefs in regards to a trade for star defensive tackle Chris Jones. Once again, Bears fans, whether you believe this rumor or not, let's talk about the possibility of the Chicago Bears actually having the opportunity to trade for a defensive player like Chris Jones. First things first, Bears fans, the question of today's episode of Keek on the Mic is this: do the Chicago Bears actually have the chance to trade for a defensive superstar like Chris Jones? Chris Jones, as we all know, is currently holding out on the Kansas City Chiefs because he wants a massive contract extension, which would basically make him the highest defensive paid player in the entire National Football League. And before I go any further, I agree that Chris Jones deserves to get paid. He is an absolutely menace in terms of getting after the quarterback. He is one of the best defensive players in the entire National Football League, and the Kansas City Chiefs wouldn't have been able to win a lot of their games or Super Bowls without Chris Jones on that defense. Besides Chris Jones, to me personally, the Kansas City defense is not really that good to me. So without Chris Jones, I think the Kansas City Chiefs on the defensive side would be okay, but I think they would definitely take a dip in production if they actually do lose a guy like Chris Jones. Anyhow, Chris Jones is currently holding out on the Kansas City Chiefs, and he has gone absolutely silent in terms of communicating with the Kansas City Chiefs. Head coach Andy Reid actually had this to say in regards to the situation surrounding Chris Jones. Check this out, Bears fans. There's been no communication, so I don't know what's going to go there. Whatever happens, happens. And if he's not there, the game goes on, right? That's how it works. There's just been no communication. Interesting, Bears fans, but once again, there has been no communication between Chris Jones and the Kansas City Chiefs because he wants a contract extension. And it seems like at the moment, the Chiefs are not willing to give him a contract extension, which I'm not sure why they're not willing to give a guy like that a contract extension. I'm pretty sure they have their reasons. But the funny thing about the situation with Chris Jones is that he actually responded to a question on Twitter. Someone on Twitter asked him, "Hey, Chris Jones, when do you plan on returning?" And Chris Jones responded on Twitter with Week 8. So Chris Jones is willing to take these constant fines. He says that he's able to afford it and wait until Week 8 to make his return to the team and the Kansas City Chiefs. So obviously he's willing to do whatever it takes in order to earn that massive contract extension. Whether the Kansas City Chiefs actually pay the man, which I think they definitely should, or they are willing to trade him, remains to be unknown. But Bears fans, all of this has led to the speculation that Chris Jones would actually be traded. And even though the Kansas City Chiefs are very adamant about saying, hey, we are not trading Chris Jones, we all know things can change very fast in the National Football League. So when we're looking at this situation in regards to the Kansas City Chiefs actually possibly trading Chris Jones amid his holdout in terms of him wanting a new contract extension. We all know the Chicago Bears are linked to Chris Jones for many reasons. One, the connection with Ryan Poles during his time in Kansas City, so they definitely have that connection going for them. Two, we definitely have a lot of draft capital. We have 2 first-round picks in this next draft, so we definitely have the ammunition to trade for a guy like Chris Jones. And number 3, and this is definitely a big one, we have the money to actually pay the man. If we were, in fact, let's say Chris Jones was available, and we, in fact, traded for a guy like Chris Jones, we would be able to give him his massive contract extension, which I believe that he definitely deserves. But with all this being said, Bears fans, I do believe that there's both pros and cons for actually trading for a guy like Chris Jones. Starting off with the pros, Bears fans, he would absolutely be a game changer for this Chicago Bears defense. When you look at a guy like Chris Jones, he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He has 65 career sacks. He had a career high in sacks last year with 15.5 sacks. He is a dominant presence that can't be blocked without being double teamed. And sometimes when he's double teamed, that's not even enough to keep him out of the backfield. This guy is an absolutely dominant force for the Kansas City Chiefs defense. He is a game wrecker. You have to make sure you always know where Chris Jones is at. He would instantly give us that inside pass rush presence that we have been missing. There is no question that he would make our defensive line a whole lot more dominant. And when I think about adding a guy like Chris Jones, this is the instant thought that I have. Can you imagine Yannick Ngakoue, DeMarcus Walker, and Chris Jones all together on the same defensive line? To me, that is an absolutely dominant trio and would instantly, Bears fans, make our defensive line a whole lot better. And I know you guys don't have to tell me in the comment section. I know the Bears do have Justin Jones. I know that we just drafted Javon Dexter and Zach Pickens, so we should just let those guys develop. But we do have to understand that Chris Jones, we're talking about Chris Jones here, he is a massive upgrade over any one of those guys. And as we all know, Bears fans, Ryan Poles has done a whole lot of retooling to the Chicago Bears defense this offseason, especially looking at the defensive line. And Chris Jones, and a guy like Chris Jones, would just be the cherry on top for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears offseason. I don't think there would be any debate if Ryan Poles was able to pull off a trade for Chris Jones. Everyone will be giving the Chicago Bears an A+ for this offseason. And once again, when you add a guy like Chris Jones, he will make everyone around him better. So those are definitely the pros of adding a guy like Chris Jones. But once again, with pros, there are definitely some cons as well. The first thing that comes to mind is that he will be turning 30 years old this season. So even though I know he has a lot left in the tank, once again, he's coming off a career year with 15.5 sacks. So he still has a lot left in the tank, Bears fans. But we have to keep in consideration that once again, he will be turning 30 years old. And not only will we have to give up the draft capital to get him, he's going to want a massive contract extension. And my main question for Ryan Poles is, will Ryan Poles actually be willing to give up draft capital and pay the man a massive extension for someone that's about to turn 30 years old? I'm not sure if Ryan Poles is actually willing to do that. The second con that comes to mind, Chicago Bears fans, is once again talking about the money. He wants a massive contract extension. Chris Jones is looking for $30 million a year. Yes, Bears fans, $30 million a year. A good contract for Chris Jones would be 5 years, around $150 million, with $80 million guaranteed. It would rank him amongst the highest paid defensive players in the NFL. Once again, I'm a big Chris Jones fan. I believe that he deserves every penny, but once again, he's about to turn 30 years old. And after you give up all that draft capital, will Ryan Poles actually be willing to pay a man $30 million a year, knowing that we still have some other holes on the roster that actually need to be addressed? The other con that really comes to mind in regards to the Bears actually trading for a guy like Chris Jones is that the Bears, once again, would have to give up a massive amount of draft capital. We all know that Ryan Poles is not a big fan of trading away draft assets. He's all about collecting more draft assets to make sure the team is in a good spot, not only for now, but for future success as well. So if the Chiefs were actually going to trade Chris Jones, the expected compensation for a guy like Chris Jones will look something like this: a 2024 first and second round pick, a 2025 second and fourth round pick as well. So I'm not sure if Ryan Poles will be willing to give up 4 draft picks. So you're talking about giving up one of your first this next year when you know you have 2. I know we have the ammunition to actually do it. So you have to give up a first round pick this year, a second round pick this year, a 2025 second and fourth round pick. So that's 4 total picks. And then you have to pay Chris Jones $30 million a year for a guy that's about to turn 30 years old. We all know what Ryan Poles is trying to accomplish here as a GM in Chicago. So I'm not sure if that's going to really fly for a GM like Ryan Poles. So overall, Bears fans, we have the ammunition to actually get a guy like Chris Jones. We know that we have a massive amount of draft capital, and we know that we have the actual money and cap space to give Chris Jones what he wants. So it makes a whole lot of sense why Chris Jones is being linked to the Chicago Bears. But, and this is a very huge but, do I actually think that Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears make the deal for Chris Jones if the Chiefs actually make him available? The simple answer to that question is no, I do not. I just don't think Ryan Poles is willing to give up all that draft capital and pay him $30 million, especially once again, knowing that Chris Jones is about to turn 30 years old. If Chris Jones was about to turn 26 years old and he actually fit the timeline of what Ryan Poles was looking for in his rebuild, I think this would be a no-brainer move. I think Ryan Poles would possibly already have called the Kansas City Chiefs and made the trade for Chris Jones to be a Chicago Bear. But the realistic side of things, and me trying to be a realistic fan, I'm trying to be optimistic. Of course, I would love to see Chris Jones in a Bears uniform. I know that he would make this defense and this overall football team a whole lot better. But me being the realistic fan, the guy's about to turn 30 years old. I know he's still a game changer. I know he still has a lot left in the tank, but he's about to turn 30 years old. You have to get a whole lot of draft capital, and then you have to pay the man $30 million a year. To put this in perspective, if the Chicago Bears were one player away, or if Chris Jones was turning 26, then absolutely I would make the trade. But in this scenario, that is not the case. Chris Jones about to turn 30 years old, and the Chicago Bears are not one player away from winning the Super Bowl this season. So when you add all those factors in, I don't think personally that it's smart to trade for a guy like Chris Jones. Even though sometimes when I'm thinking about the possibility of adding Chris Jones, I get flashbacks from the 2018 season when we're a couple of weeks away from the regular season, opening against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. And guess who we traded for? Is Khalil Mack. It definitely reminds me of that Khalil Mack trade back in 2018. So at the moment, no, I do not think Ryan Poles will make that type of commitment or will make that type of trade because I feel like he's all about adding assets and not getting rid of assets. But it is the NFL and crazy things happen. Maybe Ryan Poles takes a risk here because he knows the type of player Chris Jones is. He got extensive look at him when he was a part of the Kansas City Chiefs organization. So maybe he does take the risk. But when you look at Ryan Poles' track record, it says otherwise, and it says that he will not, in fact, make the trade for Chris Jones. So overall, we just have to wait and see what happens. Let's see if Chris Jones actually becomes available for a trade. And then when it goes to that point, then maybe we can rediscuss this. But my question for you guys before I end this episode of Geek on the Mic is, if Chris Jones was available, would you make the trade and bring him to Chicago? Let me know down below in the comment section. Before I let you guys go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Geek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, back for an all-new Bears podcast right here on Geek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and bear down.
You've been listening to Geek on the Mic, a podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Thanks, guys, and bear down.